Welcome in, folks. This is Divots and Pivots. It's Tuesday night here on That Sports Podcast Network, and we are coming off what was definitely an exciting finish to the weekend this past weekend. But let's not get into that just yet. We will get into that in a little bit. Bud will be joining us here shortly. But let's get into, first of all, my opening thoughts of this week. And where I want to go is something that's coming up here soon as an opening thought. Full Swing on Netflix, Full Swing 2, I should say, coming up here soon as Bud joins us. But Full Swing 2 coming up on March 6th is what my opening thought is. I can get into that. But first, welcome in, Bud. How are you, Bud? Flying in hot as always.
I don't know where to start. The intern's still out of town that has my old camera, so we're having to make do with this rusty backup. I apologize for everybody who tuned in for the moneymaker here. This is obviously the high-res experience that you've come to expect from Divots and Pivots. Also, I thought I had a little bit of a buffer here. I forgot that we're still in transition with That Sports Podcast Network and our new intro. And let's not do this today. Thank you.
No, there you go.
I thought my camera was about to fritz out again. We really were gonna have to fire some people. So good to see you. Happy Tuesday evening. Sorry, I just came flying in hot like that. Good. It's World War III upstairs. Toddlers get to that point. You've got a couple of kids.
Yeah, I was actually just hearing it upstairs myself right before you came on. So I was like, I wonder what's happening up there.
Are you talking about like at my house or your house?
No, here at my house.
Yes,
so you're not alone.
So thanks for everybody who tuned in, all the mom bloggers who tuned in to listen to us talk about parenting in the 21st century. I'm your host, Bud Copeland. This Bud's for you. Morale is high. I'm in one of those moods where everybody else I think is kind of doing this for a minute, and I take 3 steps back, and I'm like, why do people focus on the negative? But morale's high. We've got a lot to look forward to. Agreed. I will say I'm entering that show hole. I found myself recently being like, oh, what football game is on tonight? And I do have to admit that I'm missing that a little bit, but there's plenty of golf content to fill it, plenty of conversation to go around. And so what's on your brain? What's kind of something that's caught your eye recently? And I bet that mine might be coming in and surprising you. I don't know if you've seen this yet or not.
Well, so you mentioned the show hole here, so just quickly, I'm going to touch on that. I've just started for the same reason, sports are, everyone's been saying, oh, football's done, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I say, well, the Masters is coming up. There's a lot of good sports coming up, but there's a couple weeks here now. We are in a little bit of a slight lull before the players comes and whatnot, before March Madness kicks in. I've been binging for the last week or two now, Suits on Netflix, just finally getting around to watching Suits, and it is worth the hype. It meets the bill perfectly. It is a fantastic show.
So where are you right now in the series?
I don't know the exact season I'm on, honestly, but I know it's after.
Who cares about season? I don't give a shit if you're on season 4, episode 2. What's going on in the storyline?
So it was Donna just got offered the job by Stu to go over to the stock firm and the stock company instead.
Okay.
So Paula and Harvey looks like they're probably going to break up if he doesn't fire Donna, is basically what the ultimatum she just gave him on the last episode I watched.
So and again, just for those joining us, the tardy kids like me, back in high school, our bell would ring. And it rang for something like 8 seconds. It had 7 rings over 8 seconds. And the rule was always you had to be in the door by the last bell. So we almost had it mapped out that as long as you're at a certain point in the courtyard or the hallway, when that bell starts ringing, you're perfectly fine. You can make it there in time. But the Suits revelation is fascinating. I'm a huge Suits guy. I just went through it for the second time, although I will say I petered out twice, couldn't finish it.
Okay.
And petered out's an awful phrase to use, but I couldn't.
Yeah, that was
it jumped the shark at a point for me, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but a fun fact about Suits, it's why my best friend became a lawyer. He was a leasing consultant for a number of years. He said he had been on a number of job interviews, and he found himself enthralled with that. And he was like, why don't I go do that? And so he went to law
Yeah.
school, and now he's a defense attorney in Cobb County. Different type of law, but similar kind of story. It's
Yeah.
funny that you should pivot there early, because I was actually going to ask you later this exact question of how are you filling your show hole? And it sounds to me like Suits is where you've gone. I just yesterday picked mine. I literally picked one, and that's what made me think of you. Was like, I got to ask him what he's doing with his time, because similarly, once March Madness comes around, I'll pay attention for a couple of days just because it's daytime live sports, and
you
can't
hope
get
to
anything
you
better
hope
than
to
that.
see and you hope to see the Cinderella upsets or whatever.
Yeah,
But you nailed it. But the best thing about March Madness is that it's during the day while you're working, and it just
right.
there's something fun about that aspect. So you nailed it there. But sorry, continue.
My social media feed recently, whatever algorithms are running the universe, has been pumping a lot of Friday Night Lights clips.
Ooh,
And I
such
don't
a
know
good
what that says.
show.
And I never watched the movie with Billy Bob Thornton and Tim McGraw and whatever. And I never
Completely
watched
different from the show.
Well, no, I never watched the show either. Same, completely, but the show that is, like you say, completely different. Although it's about a Texas high school football in the town, and yeah, I know dipshit. I never watched either one of those, but all of a sudden, and specifically the clip came up yet last night that made me kind of say, you know what, I got some time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna watch Friday Night Lights. I'm gonna go back and rip through it. Was they're in some locker room, and I guess after a game where something bad had happened between players, and one team goes to confront another, and then the other coach, not, you can tell who the protagonist is, obviously. And the other coach, starts jawing at the player and says, "Get out of here," all that kind of stuff. And then the main guy comes in, puts him up against a wall. I mean, I never played football for obvious reasons, but I also my school didn't have a football team at the time. But it made me want to run through a freaking brick wall. And I guess the golf equivalent of that was like, it made me really want to go, grind out some 10-footers on the green for 5 hours. It really isn't
a golf equivalent, but it was a nice attempt.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it does lead right into what you kind of have written down for your opening thoughts, which surprised me that you're this excited about it. But then when I looked back, it makes sense. So what are your opening thoughts for this week? Where's your brain going off the course?
I'm pumped. Well, I'm pumped that because we're talking about shows and filling this, quote unquote show hole after the Super Bowl hangover here. And that Full Swing is right around the corner. It starts on March 6th. That's what, 2.5 weeks away, roughly. So I got into really looking into today about like who's going to be making appearances and whatnot. The format's going to be the same. It's going to be fantastic, but we do have a fantastic lineup. Joel Diamond's coming back, Rory, Dustin, some of those guys. There's a few here names that I don't know if you've seen the names of who's going to be in it yet, but there's a few names here that jumped out to me that I'm very curious to see at what point they caught them in the storyline.
Sure.
Zach Johnson is one. I want to see. Obviously, I'm assuming it's going to be around the Ryder Cup time and leading up to that, whatnot. But curious to see how he handled that from a different perspective. And then Keegan Bradley, because I'm curious to see if they mention any of the TGL and like his recruitment process into that. Like if that's even mentioned. Like I don't think we're going to see obviously an in-depth look of anything or any sneak peeks of what that is supposed to be. But I'm curious to see if it's even mentioned. Like, if he just mentioned in passing in the episode, had a phone call with Tiger today or something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of curious to see if the PGA gives a little nod to TGL through the eyes of Keegan Bradley at all. Frog Watch, baby. We're here.
Fucking Frog Watch. Frog Watch 2024. Rory and Adam still holding it down. I think Tyrrell's going to be shown the door, but who knows?
Yeah.
I like that because Full Swing, you're right. It came out around this time last year. And since then, the Zach Johnson thing is going to be all about his Ryder Cup captaincy. And the whole season, I was trying to look up the episode list here because the whole season, it finishes with like a two-parter, all roads lead to Rome, part 1 and 2, because they were there. So we're going to get to hear about Hatgate. We're going to get to see about like the parking lot, little scuffle. I'm looking forward to, I want to see the reaction of everybody when they find out about this kind of the peace talks, so to speak, the agreement June 6th, right before the U.S. Open. I think it was June 6th or 7th, somewhere in there last year, but it was right before the U.S. Open, and that everybody was putting down their guns. And then, a year later, Rory, right now, when you see people talking about Rory, they're talking about how he's footloose and fancy free, so to speak. He's focusing on playing and competing only. He's not on the players board anymore, or he's not a player representative anymore. He's not fighting these battles, and he's just focusing on the golf. And we'll see him in a couple of weeks. Obviously, we're not going to see many people. We'll talk about Mexico later, but I'm looking forward to seeing how that shakes down, because I don't know, man. It's been eerily quiet with the live and the live PIF PGA Tour merger non-merger agreement talks down to, and I noticed this subtlety. I think you mentioned it too, when this whole PGA Tour Enterprises was introduced. You back up the tape, and originally all the power was going to still, or the majority shareholders power, whatever you want to talk about, was going to always live with the PGA Tour. That's how the PGA Tour and Jay Monahan, that's how they all signed on, is at the end of the day, we're going to have final say. But they were still going to give the chairman's position over to, Chairman Yasser. I think it was kind of be one of those things where kind of like a country that has a prime minister and a president. It's like, who really has the power? Who's really in charge? There's technicalities involved. Look at it, right. But it's a shitty way to look at it. But I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. But I think with when Jay was announced as the chairman, even there's been other kind of subtextual hints at, we've got this money now, we welcome their investment, but we don't necessarily need it anymore. They went out and snagged John Rahm. So I want to see how all that's reflected in Full Swing Season 2, because we're about to get the reality of it here. I think in the next few months, and I think Full Swing Season 3 is going to have their headline right there. I'll tell you what, and this kind of parlays into my opening thoughts today. It's something that Mackenzie Hughes, and folks who don't know Mackenzie Hughes, Canadian golfer, he's been, I don't know if he's won or not. I want to say he has snagged a victory, but
I can't remember. But I know the Canadians have been making a surge recently. I know. At one point, looking at the leaderboard this weekend, it was almost a point I made that there was like 5 of them in the top 10 at one point. So they're making a nice little surge this season.
Well, you love Adam Svensson and Nick Taylor's. Nick Taylor's been showing up. But anyways, Mackenzie Hughes was doing a walk and talk, and this is something that I think the PGA Tour is introducing. That it's kind of like, at first with baseball, you saw them do it. The managers put on the headset, for an inning or two or half an inning. It's up there with, the mandatory 2 questions that NBA basketball coaches have to take and football coaches. It's that little bit of a glimpse and an insight. Yeah. And I'm shocked that some of these players have agreed to do it. I mean, Rory's done one, they pop in the earbuds and they walk from the tee to whatever approach shot, or they play the entire hole talking to the TV host. Now, obviously these guys have to sign off on it. Sure. But for them, I do love it. I think it's kind of cool, and it is that level of accessibility that's going to help the tour, or those little kind of tweaks. So Mackenzie Hughes was doing one, and Jim Nantz had heard Mackenzie answer a similar question previously, so he brought it back up and was basically like, Mackenzie, what are your thoughts on the current state of the game? And if you miss his comments, he essentially was saying something we've heard before. He was disappointed in the role that money has taken on in the game, and how it's getting away from the kind of meaning behind all of this, competing at a high level, going against, top quality golfers, helping out the communities through the tournaments that you play, and kind of the roots of it all. And it stuck with me because it paralleled something that I've been talking about for quite a long time, which is the role that money is being played, maybe not by the PGA Tour, but maybe by us, or by the kind of the media writ large. And here we go, podcaster in his basement's going to throw shade at the big media guys. No, but I mean, and it's not even the big media guys like the writers. I think it's the producers at the high level who think that this is the storylines that people at home care about. A long time ago, and I mean, I say a long time ago, but a while back, we were a little more enamored, I think, with how much money these guys were taking home. But it has hit these absurd levels where it's so inaccessible. We can't fathom those numbers. And also at the end of the day, when I turn it off, it's not like, good for him for getting another $4 million. Yeah. Like, I still got bills to pay, that kind of, it's a little tone deaf. It's a little let them eat cake to be focusing so much on that. Now, I'm going to pause for a moment, and everybody's going to be like, oh, it's the reality. You're naive if you don't think that money moves everything. No, what I'm saying is an old kind of U.S. civics lesson from the middle school days. And nobody likes to see how the sausage is made. And same kind of thing is here. Okay, we get it. They're going to take home big paychecks, but we don't really care about that. That's, it's so rare that these guys get picked off by Liv now. It's going to be, one snagging here and there.
Yeah.
And Arthur Branch, the Falcons owner,
Yeah.
he was talking about, because he's part of that Fenway group that's now,
Mhm.
part owners, investors, whatever, the PGA Tour Enterprises. Somebody was asking him about the world golf rankings and stuff. And he said, quite frankly, we still, as far as I count, we have 93 of the top 100 ranked players in the world. Now pause a couple of which is true. I mean, it's
Yeah, I
that's
know,
a good
yeah.
way to, I don't, you seem to think that there's not merit to that statement.
Well,
You take
so
3 steps back.
kind of what
93
you
out of 100 is way more than, I mean, if you want to say, even if it's 7 of the top 10 over at Live,
Mhm.
not anymore. And now the official world golf rankings now, I'm not even going to say they're watered down. I think what we're seeing is it's like much more of you seeded your space. If somebody were to say, is Bryson DeChambeau the 264th ranked golfer
Of
in the
course
world?
not.
I'd say no, he's way better than a lot of those people on that
Yeah.
ranking system. It is. And we all know why. So it's not like they're not obsolete. And people, you're right there,
Yeah.
prove your point. It's obsolete. No, people are opting out of one system. And even when they get back in, this is later on in the rundown, but even when they get back in, because Liv will get some ranking
Yeah.
points eventually. We've talked about this before. So anyways, Mackenzie Hughes, shout out to the Canadian. He's right. I don't give a damn what you win. I want to see you and another guy having to hit prime golf shots under pressure, sinking
Mhm.
putts, doing things that I am unable to do. I don't really give a rat's rear that your paycheck's going to be 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 times whatever, average Joe's taking home. Good for you. It's not spite out of that. And there's a great argument to say, well, isn't that aspirational? Isn't that, we should all kind of look to things and opportunity. That's like telling every kid in the chorus, you too can have a record deal. It's not the reality of the world. So don't focus on that part and maybe focus on the art of it all. Nice little analogy. So when Liv does come back around, let's pivot real quick because our opening thoughts have turned into a rambling news. When Liv does come back around, and this is part of it all, they're going to apply for world golf ranking points again.
Yep.
And this is back in the news. And for folks who maybe not understand why they're such a big deal, the Open Championship and the Masters invite the world top 50 as declared by the official world golf rankings. US Open, I think it's the top 60, and then the PGA Championship, it's like the top 80 or 100, something like that. So they're basically how you get into the majors unless you are a former champion, or you going through the Open qualifying process for one of the Opens.
Yep.
And Joaquin Niemann earlier this year won on Live, and he, was really kind of morose about it because he realized it doesn't have a bigger, he's putting all this real effort into his professional craft, and it's not having the payoff that it used to because he took himself voluntarily out of the running for that. He is again going to be there by way of the Australian Open. So that's what 20 or 30 of those guys, 21 of the Live guys are at the Asian Tour this week. They're trying to get points because the Asian Tour is part of the PGA Tour family of networks. They do award points, not nearly as many because obviously the overall caliber of those fields and tournaments aren't as much. That said, when Liv does get its points, it's not going to be as much as I think they're expecting because they are going to take into account you play 54 holes. You only play a handful of tournaments. You do have this selective process. So these guys are going to have to continue to supplement their schedule with the Asian Tour. I don't think that's going anywhere. But at the end of the day, to say that the official world golf rank that we need to change because 48 golfers, 60 golfers are going to dictate what, if you look at your boy, Rick Run Good, when he took a look at the, at Rory's kind of world global tour with relegation and stuff.
Yeah. He kind of pieced it together what it could look like. Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a minute. But it totals up to like 1,100, 1,200 golfers when you include all of these tours. So I do agree that Liv has planted its flag. It's moved the landscape a little bit. Nobody denies that, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a shift as they thought it was going to be because of these, 10 guys that they have.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I would love to get more. I would love to have Rick on and get more into the breakdown of what he kind of structured together. Because one thing he had that surprised me, and I'm sure there's more to it, I don't want to spend too much time on it, is that he did have the Live Tour in that second tier with, with the I forget the other tour he had. Oh, no, that's right. It was the PGA Tour and the Live Tour on the same level, and then the World Tour at the top. That's right. And then you had the DP World Tour he just called the DP Tour under that, which I don't know. I feel like the DP World Tour has done a lot for golf as far as a
huge. The
pathway,
European
as
Tour has got
far as growing. Like they've from when they were called as the European Tour, now the DP World Tour, like what they've done for world golf, like that just seems like a slight disrespect to just put them as the technical third tier. Like that seems like that's I don't know. I didn't like it, but I'd be curious to be curious to talk to him more to hear why he thinks that's how it would go. I'm sure it would be a business reason and money and whatnot. But I don't know. It's got to be money, and I know that, but it doesn't feel right to me.
So if you haven't seen the piece we're talking about, I'll give you the real quick. I mean, the real quick rundown. You have this World Golf Tour at the top tier, 80 players, and then below that you have tier 2, which would be made up of the PGA Tour of 100 players, and then Live Tour of their 48 or 54 players, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And then below that would be tier 3 with the DP World Tour or the DP Tour and the Corn Ferry Tour, each with like 75 players. And then it just keeps on stepping it out into tiers down like to the Australia Asian Tour, the Sunshine Tour, et cetera, et cetera. So what Drew, I just called you Drew. What Drew's getting at, what Andrew's getting at, and I understand why you're saying this is like, how come Live and PGA Tour get to make up that kind of tier 2? And the reason is it's the money, 100%. Yeah. That's all there is to it, because they're still going to put a disproportionate amount of kind of revenue or not expense for whatever they're going to generate in revenue for all this talent and whatever. And that's why this is a hypothetical, because in reality, it's still kind of like, that's not a savvy business model. But because of that, and I think the DP Tour would, take personal umbrage to it. But when the dust settled, if this whole thing were to actually happen, you have to establish that initial 80, that's going to drain all of those tours of their top tier talent, all 3 of them. And so they're all going to be trying to fill those vacuums. And so you just assume that they're going to fill it with proportionately good talent. And the further down you get, you don't have as much of it. So that's why I think when you start splicing hairs, you put the DP World Tour in the 3rd tier and you let the relegation do its work. Anyway, that was more time I thought we'd talk about relegation than ever. There's our 60 good soccer seconds.
That's fine.
Genesis.
Because the Genesis was wild this weekend for many different storylines. I say let's just start at the start, because so much happened. Thursday it was good. Honestly, Thursday was the most normal day. Well, it was the most normal day out of all the days. Let's be real. It was pretty chill. And then obviously all eyes were on Tiger on Thursday. He came out up and down, to be expected. Finished 1 over. Not surprised there. I don't think he would have made the cut in the end, even if he didn't withdraw. But that was the big news. Obviously, he withdrew after, I think it was 6 holes. I believe.
Yeah, I think he hit his tee shot on 7, and they picked him up in a cart.
Yeah, and the news there was that flu-like symptoms. And head was in his hands at the cart going off the course. Not pretty, I guess. There was some talk about because he had shanked that shot on the first round, and he said that was caused because of his back spasmed. He didn't say he had spasms. He said in that moment it spasmed and caused him to shank a shot. But apparently the withdrawal on Friday was because of flu-like symptoms. You have now opened up the biggest debate. Was it in and out, or was it exhaustion for Tiger Woods that caused him to have flu-like symptoms? Did you land on exhaustion? Did your head get the best of you, or could you not close that thought that he had some in and out the night before?
Well, I don't know if you saw it. He absolutely had in and out. There's a picture of him taking his pickles off the in and out burger. There was like an in and out pop-up restaurant at Riviera on Wednesday or Tuesday of tournament week. And so there was pictures. That's where that came from. That wasn't speculated out of thin air. As creative.
I didn't even see that there was that there. I thought you just said that because they were in California.
Nah, there's a great social media meme of like an In-N-Out guy wearing an In-N-Out, uniform, kind of peering or leering at Tiger while Tiger's eating his burger, and there's a joke going around.
I did see that picture, but I thought someone photoshopped.
It does look photoshopped, and I think it might have been photoshopped, but it's based in reality in the sense that In-N-Out was at play. No, I mean, if you think about it, it does make sense. And I'll tell you what, the Riggsy over at Barstool said it And I agree. He's like, the absolute last thing the PGA Tour can have is the image of Tiger being driven off the course, head in his hands, because it's an injury or he's falling apart. If
Yep.
true, this is my favorite phrase in news, but we're not in news, we're in podcasting now. If true, and he had the flu, I can't help but think that was just rhyming. Then it's no big deal because you think about it, he's Tiger Woods. So he did want to play at a high level. Hosting these tournaments is not like, hosting a dinner party. He does have obligations and he's got to make sure that things, it's Tiger Woods. He's putting his name on it. I'm sure that he wants to give it his full attention or as much as he can. And so all those things come into a head. If you're battling the flu, you get out there, you can only take so, hydration and injections and IVs and, whatever you got. So hopefully that's what it was. Because if the physical is breaking down again or already, then that is a seriously bad sign. There's speculation, where are we going to see him again? Is he going to pop up it? Because in his mind, I think that he would want to play basically he would want to play 7, maybe with a flex 8th in there. He would want to play the four majors, and then he would want to play his tournament, Jack's tournament, Arnie's tournament. And that makes sense. And, and I wouldn't be shocked if, every once in a while he wants to throw in an appearance somewhere else. But he still wants to compete. And I do think that we're going to see a time, unfortunately, sooner than later, where Tiger's not going to be a ceremonial golfer. The minute that he doesn't fully in his brain think that he can go out there and compete, even if he is kind of convincing himself of it, he's going to hang it up. Because he doesn't want to go out there and bang it around for 76, 75. Still, to this day, his streak of 142 consecutive cuts made is absolutely out of this universe, mind-boggling. Scotty Scheffler was talking about it. I don't know if it was a recent clip or a previous one, but every year at Tiger's tournaments, these things surface and they talk about his records. And when he says, you think about it, in the profession that we have, and you look at everybody else who's played this game, that means that not just once he didn't come out again, have food poisoning or the flu on a Friday that he couldn't battle through, or just the random kind of shitty putting day that led to a 76. And he's like, that happens. It happens to the best all the time. And this guy just didn't have it for was it 7-year stretch from 98 to 2005. So he's still the GOAT. Big Cat's going to be fine. I will say the impact on golf overall is not that big of a deal yet, but this is definitely testing the waters because it had everybody holding their breath, the ambulance outside, the whole scene, no matter how it finished out, definitely was kind of, like you said, I don't know if it stole the show, but it was definitely the highlight.
At least for the day.
That's where things started to get really fucking weird. And then they just continued right along with Jordan Spieth Spieth getting disqualified.
That was someone who couldn't handle the internet, obviously, because he did shit the bed on the course, and he goes out and signs for a 3 when he got a 4. And here's my thoughts on that. That sucks. It's unfortunate. He made a mistake. He owned the mistake and hasn't tried to back down from it once in his comments afterwards. He even was out. I forget who he made a social media comment on someone else's post. I forget who it was on Sunday, saying well, make sure you don't do basically poking fun of himself for signing the wrong score on the scorecard.
He was congratulating Hideki, and he said, "Make sure you double check that scorecard." Yeah,
that's what it was, which I love because he's owning it and whatever. He knows what he did, and he blames no one but himself. What I'm hearing around after this was that they're blaming the rule. They're blaming this archaic rule that's out of date and it's stupid, silly rule. And look, I get it. The idea of the rule that once you sign that scorecard, if it's wrong, as long as you're still standing within that room and you realize it's wrong, you can go back, fix it, and re-sign it or whatever it counts. But the second you walk out that door, and literally the second you step outside that door, they call you out on it, and then you're done. It's too late. You can't fix it. I get it. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds stupid. But Jordan realized it is the rule. It's the rule for a reason, because the second they start lax on the parameters they set on some of these rules, it just opens up the possibility for people trying to pull some funny business to get away with some stuff. And I don't think necessarily anybody would even get away with it, but I get why the rule's in place, and I don't see the need to change it or remove it.
Here's what I saw this weekend.
Do you, as you listen to yourself?
I was looking up a comment somebody brought up about this rule because I'll tell you right now, this is the dumbest fucking rule that is still being enforced in golf. And you know what? It's a perfect time. Let's take a quick break. Let's hear from Underdog,
Okay.
and then we can get into why this is still the dumbest fucking rule in golf.
Fantasy Sports Corp and Underdog Fantasy have teamed up to start your fantasy season off in the win column with Best Ball. What is Best Ball? It's quite simply the easiest way to win. No team management, no trades, no waivers. It's their biggest contest ever and it has only gotten bigger. You simply have to sit and win. You don't even have to set your lineup. Always get your best score every week. Just enter a contest, draft your team, and Underdog will do the rest. What could make this even better? How about free money, up to $100 using our exclusive promo code? Go online now and use the promo code DIVPIV to double your deposit up to $100. You tell them Gingerbread sent you. Good girl.
And real fast before we get into your tease comments there, Nate, our good friend Nate from Acorn Hills over on Instagram, asked if Tiger goes, does Liv take an upper hand? And the short answer for that, I know we're both going to say, so I will answer for Bud, is no. And Anthony Kim, he also says Anthony Kim never signed the wrong scorecard. So you know what, you are probably right there, Nate. We can't argue that last one on Anthony Kim.
I still don't know where Anthony Kim's going to show up or if it's going to move the needle as much as again, golf nerds, big deal to us. But I think this would almost be like in the world of music, if some star from the 80s resurfaced at some, music festival, there's a niche population that would be excited by it. But I don't know how much. It's hard to explain the Anthony Kim phenomena because.
So you know what it is? The perfect analogy. It's what's her name showing up at the Grammys to sing Fast Car with this year with Luke Combs, because so much of the generation that loves Luke Combs, loves the Fast Car by Luke Combs, thinks it was Luke Combs' song. They had no clue that it's why can't I remember her damn name right now?
Tracy Chapman.
Thank you, Tracy Chapman. They have no clue. Like, Tracy Chapman's up there and they're looking at, oh, who's this lady? And the rest of us from our generation and older is like, oh my God, it's freaking Tracy Chapman. We haven't seen her in 30, 40 years. So not 40 years, but 20 years.
That's close. I'll take
but
it.
I feel like that's close.
The court will allow it. Yeah, no, but Anthony Kim, I think it's cool, but at the same time, I don't know if it's really going to make that big of a difference at the end of it. I don't think he commands that kind of a broader following. So somebody commented, and at this Buds for you on the Insta Hams, really like your take. And that's what I was saying. He said, all except for the Jordan Spieth not being able to keep score. If you've ever played the top tier event, ... which don't know what the fuck you mean by that. Then the top tier event, then you know about the scoring area. And if you're unable to write your score down accurately, you don't belong in that particular event. No. So it's a golf tournament. It's a golf tournament. It's, by the way, listen, the scorekeeping, the whole rules around the integrity of the scorecard came from an era before we had 24-hour cameras rolling in every direction, covering every shot. Volunteers. There's how many volunteers are with every group? Have them keep the score. This part of the game, this whole, score, I think players should have to, confirm it, or maybe they don't. Maybe that's just a responsibility we take off them. But the whole idea that, like, if you can't sign your scorecard, then you don't belong at the event, can it? Well, I was going to allow you to comment and share until it's like, what do you mean? That's not the measure here. Whatever. How good is
at its finest?
Not how good is your penmanship. So it still is a stupid rule because when you're talking about making rules, okay, why was the rule made in the first place? Because we came from a time where integrity mattered. You had to be able to trust people. And so you did have somebody else keep their score. And so if there was a discrepancy, you go to the third. We could just go to the tape. We have people call in from their couch and alter the trajectory of golf tournaments. You mean to tell me that Jordan Spieth, that was why he couldn't play the weekend, is because, it was a 6, it was a 5. And the presumption too that guys at this level, now somebody's going to chirp me for this because they'll say, with millions of dollars on the line, they're going to do every competitive advantage they can. I know,
professional, they better get it right.
I mean, how about penalize them? How about do what you do? The off with your head. It's you signed an incorrect scorecard, 2-stroke penalty. Okay, it was an honest mistake.
We see that when they don't drop the ball from the right height when they're taking a drop. I mean, we've seen those penalties get enforced. It could, you know, you make a good point. It could just be the same kind of idea.
I'm going to solve this right now. It's a two-stroke penalty moving forward. If you sign an incorrect scorecard, you're given the benefit of the doubt that you weren't trying to subvert all the TV cameras and the people keeping score and all that kind of stuff. It's just that it was an honest mistake, a miscalculation. You know, you get the benefit of the doubt again, because I think the need for the rule was back in the day when you would only have two sets of eyes, three sets of eyes on a group. So you honestly had to have that real kind of double secret probation level of trust. But the idea that, you know, Jordan or any golfer at that level for that matter is trying to, I mean, I could see it happening at, you know, maybe like a Monday qualifier, which we'll get into here in a second, where one stroke can mean the difference between getting in and not. But honestly, this is one of those times where we need to recognize that they're just not playing the same sport we are in the same environment. And maybe they don't have to follow. Maybe this is one of those rules, because there is no rule for you and I. It's just calling, you know, being a dick, or, you know, you're disqualified from whatever tournament, you know. But for these guys who do this day in and day out, maybe this one rule is one that we can recognize as, if there's a discrepancy and it's discovered, two-stroke penalty, you move on with your life.
So then if that was the case, and, you know, the reason Jordan missed the weekend was because that two-stroke penalty caused him to miss the cut from a point standpoint, then you're fine with him missing the weekend.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, at that point, because then it's like it wasn't off with your head. You know, if you're leading the tournament, and because incorrect scorecard. What if you sign and, you know, you had an eagle, but your competitor put you down for a birdie and you didn't really see it that closely, and you just kind of went through it because you're not used to seeing that many threes or whatever. That could be an incorrect scorecard. Two-stroke penalty. You know, maybe now you're tied for the lead or you're one off. So yeah, I think a stroke penalty, because it's not that big of a deal. And it's a test of integrity or whether you belong at that level of a tournament. Oh, get bent.
That's
I
okay.
play in plenty of qualifiers where you have a scorer's tent, and yeah, the same kind of thing applies. You rip off your score thing, you hand them their scorecard, you start comparing it, and you say, actually, back on number 7, blah 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 blah. And if there's a disagreement, then the third player is brought in, and then if there's still a disagreement, like, then they go down this whole, like, you know, the rules officials come in and start asking questions. But again, different circumstances. We can just go to the damn tape. Every single shot of these players is tracked by a volunteer. My aunt and uncle actually do this for the tour. They do shot length tracking. Maybe we'll get them on the show one of these days. Ask them about it when I go through Memphis. So if it's at a Monday qualifier, I get it. You know, the stakes are a little bit higher with that one shot margin, but I do think that maybe for the PGA Tour, let's let the data and the computers take over. Speaking of Monday qualifiers, did you see this? What's going on in Myrtle Beach?
I'm clicking. I didn't see it until you put it on here, but I haven't had a chance to actually read the whole article.
All right. Well, real quick, while you kind of
see the headline, the headline is PGA Tour makes absurd decision to host qualifier for YouTubers for spot in Myrtle Beach Classic.
That's about as accurate you can get.
Without reading the article, first of all, why is this absurd? So maybe I'm wrong here, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is there restrictions on who can sign up for a Monday qualifier? Like, do you have to have certain points in other tournaments in order to even qualify to sign up for a qualifier for any tournament?
Real quick, and by the way, because we pause on that thought, because the Monday qualifier, you're right. I looked that up too, and yes, you have to have like a 0.0 or better handicap, and that's kind of it. And then you pay a couple $100 for the entry fee. And sometimes there's a limit to the size, obviously, of how many guys they can take and get out there in one day, or how many spots are available in the field. So the details on this is essentially the Myrtle Beach Classic. And we breezed right past the finish of the Genesis, mostly because I think that's how it fell apart too. You had Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele were going to go head to head, and then Hideki just blacked out and shot 62. And even in his press conference, was like, I did have a great ball striking day, but everything fell together.
Down 6 to start the day and wins by 3. Like, unreal.
he's sneakily becoming, he's kind of like Justin Rose, but on a faster pace where you take 3 steps back and it's like he's only won 9 tournaments. I say only, he's been doing this not a long time. He's won 9 tournaments, but they're all name brand tournaments. Even,
Yeah.
the Sony Open in Hawaii it's not that. I think that's the lowest quote unquote tier. The rest are WGCs and the Waste Management. He's got the Masters and now the Riviera. So Hideki, tip of the cap. The Monday qualifier system is, mostly it's, former tour pros or grinders, guys living out of their cars and they're driving around. So for the Myrtle Beach Classic, which is going to be a non-signature event being played opposite a signature event. So being played the same time as the Wells Fargo. So it's already going to have, it's going to have like a lesson field. The PGA, and I think it's brilliant. I don't think it's absurd.
Yeah,
I think this is a stroke of genius. So if you haven't heard, there's 16 spots. They're doing a Monday qualifier. They're going to do their normal Monday qualifier essentially, and then they're going to hold 1 spot in the field, the one sponsor exemption that they're going to determine. So really, if you take 3 steps back, that's the 4th time that I've used that tonight. But if you take a broader look at it, they're not necessarily doing something special.
No.
The spot, basically, whoever is awarding the spot, the sponsors exemption is hosting a competition to see who's going to get that sponsors exemption. So it's not like I think the Monday qualifier is still happening for that event. This is going to be 16, I think 8 or 9, YouTubers. Essentially, Peter Finch is on there. Grant Horvath's on there, and then there's a handful of Korn Ferry Tour guys, and people who collectively these guys. Some of these guys have made PGA Tour starts before. George Bryan's on that list.
Some of these guys have played in the majors before. I'm sorry, like the YouTube. There's a couple. There's 2. One guy on Brett Dalkey on YouTube on Good. Good's channel. He played in the Masters a few years ago. Like this, there's guys on YouTube right now who they do videos and they play rounds. Now, granted, they're different formats, but they still play rounds with professionals. They can hack it. Yeah, are they going to go out there and win the main event tournament? Most likely not. But it's a fun little to mix up the Myrtle Beach Classic. Why not? I love it.
Also, you could see this could also become a thing where sponsors exemptions, see how many eyeballs these YouTubers are going to pull on and start, here it is moving forward. It's going to be a lot. And because, you do have, these guys are all like former college players, Matt Atkins, George Bryan, Turk Pettit was the 2021 Division I men's champion at Clemson. Dan Rappaport from Barstool is going to be playing. Peter Finch is out there. Fat Perez is playing. So these guys can play.
Perez is fucking good too.
Exactly. These guys can play. Luke Kwan from Good. He was on the University of Oklahoma.
He was a Korn Ferry Tour player.
Yeah, so it's going to be, I have no problem with it. The fact that somebody finds this absurd is a little get off my lawnish for my flavor. I think it's kind of the direction of engagement. There's a big debate right now. There's people who think that YouTube golf is the future of golf, and I still don't think it is.
I don't think it's the future of golf, but I do believe it has a very high seat at the table for the growth of golf.
Yeah. Then the ceiling is we can't even see it yet because obviously these guys started around. A lot of these guys just started playing with their buddies, and now all of a sudden they're getting into Monday qualifiers specifically tailored just for them. So Andrew, there is hope for us. I wouldn't be able to even sniff these guys.
These guys are still
with my little 2 handicap.
Well, that's what a lot of these guys are. I know some of them are 0 or better, but like they're all down in that range. Like, that's what I'm saying. They're not perfect golfers. Nobody's a perfect golfer, first off, but they're good enough.
There's tiers to the game. They're above me, and I recognize that. But it would still be fun to chop it up and throw my hat out there. So I think this is something that's cool. I think you're going to see more of this kind of stuff because yes, the accessibility of YouTube and the way that content can be, just chewed up and consumed. So this won't be televised. So they're not going to televise this, but there's like the Visit Myrtle Beach or the sponsor of the tournament who's, putting all this together is going to release like a 90-minute video, a documentary based on it, or like a video presentation of it on their YouTube channel. And these guys are going to be able to document their own experiences and kind of release. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to get short from behind the scenes before we find out who actually won. Maybe
I was going to say, let these guys carry. I was gonna say, let these guys carry their GoPros. It's what they do best. Like they would be entertaining while they're also out there trying to do something that would be, I'm assuming, a dream for some of them, but also just another stepping stone for some of the other guys who have had a brush with it before.
So I think it's a good thing, and I'm glad we're on a positive there, because something that jumped out at me, and then we'll get into the fantasy this week. It's the Mexican Open at Vidanta.
Yeah, you'll see why we're gonna breeze through the rest of this when we get there.
4 of the top 50 are in the field. Not to shit on the John Deere Classic of the South, but
when Four-born Olesen is priced above 10K on DK, you know it's a rough week.
Don't sleep on Mikey. So why are people obsessed? I saw an article headline, and I think this speaks to a larger kind of outlook on things, but it's like golf is fractured and not even the majors can put it back together. I don't understand. I don't
That's
understand.
Absurd.
Well, but it seems to be like that's what you want to see. It's like this is fractured. Who's winning? Who's losing? I don't get it. Golf itself is fine. You've heard me rant about this before. It's a game. It's a sport. With the growth of YouTube and the partnerships that they're doing, I mean, and like even the country club adjacent guys with what they latched on with at Live and kind of carved out their place in the golf universe. Golf's not fractured. Professional golf isn't even fractured. There's more opportunity now. There's more risk reward. There's more payoff. Because again, we talk about those guys over at Live are getting paid and they're getting boatloads of money. They're still not advancing their careers very much. And so if that doesn't change, then I just don't get that mentality of golf is fractured and the majors can't even put it back together. I do think that's somebody who doesn't have a lot of creativity, and I don't know this person who wrote it, but the sentiments behind it is you're either just a negative person and probably a real bore to be around at parties, and I don't want you in my foursome, or it's just kind of like trolling for clicks there, that kind of low-hanging fruit of we'll stop and look at a train wreck just to see if there's anything on fire versus, the pretty flowers that are on the other side of the tracks. So I don't know. That's stuck in my craw, the negativity that was exhibited there, but I think we have a few minutes left, so we probably should pivot to the actual golf of the week.
We should,
which is
you already mentioned we get the Mexican Open at Vidanta. I think I said that right, Vidanta.
Sure.
And so the biggest thing here is anytime we're playing it in Mexico, the elevation is somewhat of a thing, which makes sense when you look at some of the length of some of these holes. We get some long ones, and the par fives, especially this week.
That's what she said.
Are particularly long. So for me, when it comes to key threes, like that's something I focused on, because even the non-par fives still get some length to them. So strokes gained par five, strokes gained ball striking, and then proximity 200 plus out. That just seems to be the areas or types of shots from those areas that are going to lead to scoring this week. You're going to have to score on those par fives, I think, which means you got to be good from like that 200 plus out distance. It's going to be a lot of approaches from there.
I can dig it.
Yeah.
I agree with you on the strokes gained ball striking. You know me, that's where I hang my hat. And this being a field that I don't have a lot of gut play here. And you pointed out the elevation. I'm talking, this is kind of a resort type course. And so it is long, but they've got the elevation to offset that. So, and it's not necessarily overwhelmingly difficult. I think 17, 18 under has won here before. So I think it's just going to be a consistent dig to the bottom, who can make the most birdies and consistently go downhill. So I'm leaning on ball striking because that is the overall best test of how somebody is playing, in my opinion. And then, so to top that off, just who's going to separate out when you start splicing hairs, strokes gained putting. So I'm leaning on the two old reliable ones. And then birdie or better gained. That's who's making birdies, who's making putts, who is just hitting the ball well. Because the one thing that really can help in a course like this is if you are a bomber, because resort style, usually they're wider fairways, which means you can just kind of let it rip and get down there. And worst case scenario, you have a bad angle, but you're going to be in the fairway. And these guys with lofted clubs from just about any angle can do things. One thing you'll have to look at is wind. If the wind picks up with these wide courses, that could affect play. But I don't think it's going to be that. I looked at the weather and it looks like it's going to be typical Mexico this time of year. 80s, not a lot of wind. If you are again going to go one layer deeper and splice hairs, then take the guys in the morning wave, or if you're going to have to really get in the nitty gritty, because earlier in the day, no wind. But all that said, we have our key three, and I think that sets us up to be able to deliver succinctly. I don't think there's going to be too much breaking it down for each one, and I'll explain why on mine here when we get into our emergency 9.
Yeah, let's get into the emergency 9. And you nailed it. And we're gonna give the intern a nice easy edit today, because I say we just each of us run through our 9 all at once. Just because, like you said, I don't think there's gonna be much breakdown here. This field is as you said,
Charmin.
There we go, Charmin. But what I've said in the past with fields like this and tournaments like this, because it's also a wide open resort course, and people can really let it rip here, and the field is weaker, if you want to call it that, but it is. Anybody can win from anywhere, so don't be afraid if you're playing on DraftKings to reach towards the bottom of the barrel and to kick it off at number 9 for me. That's exactly a guy that I'd be going to. In Preston Stanley is my number 9 guy. He's someone who I would reach to the bottom for, mainly because he just ranks out good in my key stats. He's 14th the ball strike and 23rd on par 5s, 88th in putting, so he's a bit more the middle field there, but top 25 and 200 plus. So why not a guy like Preston Stanley in a tournament and in a field like this, followed up by Cameron Champ at number 8. Brandon Wu, number 7, finished second here last year, has had a good run at this tournament. He finished third here last year, second the year before that. So Brandon Wu is another horse for the course when it comes to here. Davis Thompson, number 6. Eric Van Rooyen. What'd you say?
Davis Thompson, go Dogs.
Oh, go Dogs. Sorry, I really could not understand what you said. Well, I put that together. Eric Van Rooyen, number 5, and then Taylor Pendrith, number 4. Tony Finau, the defending champion. If you want to talk about horse for the course, Tony Finau, winner last year, T2 the year before that. This tournament's only been here for the past 2 years. So Tony Finau is a guy that is going to be highly owned, very expensive at $1,200 on DraftKings. And then my top 2 are a bit more surprising, maybe not by pricing wise this week, but just by strict name value. Doug Gim, number 2 for me, and then Mark Hubbard, number 1. Mark Hubbard is another guy who has had a sneaky good experience here. T18 last year, T51 the year before that. But he's also been playing fairly well in his recent tournaments. 53 at Phoenix Open. He finished 4th at Pebble Beach and T20 at the Farmers. So Mark Hubbard is a guy who rates out well in the stats and also has the form to back it up. I made the editing nice and easy this week.
Big on Mark Hubbard. I am too. You mentioned it earlier, and I mentioned it earlier. It's so a quick note on when we're saying this is a weaker field, because I'm famous. I like to say a lot, the line of demarcation between, the good golfers and the elite golfers, and really the elite and the champion is really thin. And it is a tournament like this. The point you're trying to make is these guys are all really, really good. We spend so much of our time focusing on the top 20 to 30 guys that, I almost sometimes when you say things like Preston Stanley, I'm like, are you making things up at this point? But all it takes, we saw an amateur win a few weeks back, even though if he is a well-decorated amateur. And guys, when they get to this level, they're all well-decorated. They're all, all conference this or, junior champions for that. And, they've got something that they've learned how to win to get to this point, and they're not idiots either. When they look at the field and they see that most of the top 40 or 50 are sitting out this week, they understand that's an opportunity for them. So I do expect to see some good golf, and there is some crossover in our 9. But all that qualification to say that I plugged in my key 3 and I'm just taking straight up from 9 to 1. I'm not splicing any hairs. That's again the second time I've said splicing hairs. Jesus. So I'm going straight off the model. We're going to see how it's going to work for us this week. And starting at number 9, Mark Hubbard. Again, I mentioned wind, Australia guy. He plays well in the wind. He's a name that shows up at some of the tournaments where you might see some windy conditions. Thomas Dietrich at number 8. He played well recently at Pebble Beach, so I like that the numbers gave me him. Michael Kim at number 7. Nikolai Højgaard at 6, part of the brothers Højgaard, donated to us from Europe. Garrett Higo at number 5. Taylor Pendrith, number 4. Justin Suh, 3. Chesson Hadley, 2. And Eric Van Rooyen, number 1. I'm proud of my model. I support my model, and I'm going to be with my model through this weekend at the Mexican Open at Vidanta.
I love it, and that's what's it called? And maybe next week we'll give, because it's been a while since we've reminded people that we are doing a little yearly contest between us for the money between these emergency nines that we put together. Basically calculating who has earned the most money from each tournament for those picks. So we'll get there an update on that next week. I think would be a good time for that. But just looking at our Genesis really fast, I know obviously I had. I forgot I had Hideki in my emergency 9. Fuck, I hit the winner. Sweet. So I had Hideki.
Yeah, frig off, Barb.
I didn't even realize I had that. That's a nice little surprise. I had lists.
Neither did I.
I had a good run last week. Shit.
Great run.
But I know you had, because you had Xander up there too. Scheffler was in the mix a while, so we both had Aubert. So like. That we've been doing pretty well on our quote unquote earnings so far this year. So I expect this to be a tight race all the way through. Similar to last year, when we did it a little differently last year. We did a DraftKings base, but we finished pretty damn close last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty confident to say you've got the lead in the overall money right now, and we are tied 2 wins apiece. 2 wins apiece.
Wow,
a peach heading into
split those hairs again.
Swing. No, but after this week down in Mexico, the guys are going to get back. We're coming to the East Coast. We get the Florida swing that gets us geared up for the Masters. They do a little stop over in Texas before that, but I'm looking forward to the next few weeks of golf. I do think that you're going to have to kind of be a junkie if you're going to be tuning into this kind of stuff. So you can follow at Divots and Pivots, or at This Buds for you to stay tuned for all your golf updates, and at Real Mr. Mallard for all other things fantasy sports, including his golf picks. Andrew will put those out there from time to time. But real quick, I saw a headline about Live Golf. The numbers are in even after the Jon Rahm signing, and every time, and maybe I'm chasing the football, Lucy, Charlie Brown, but I don't know how much longer Live can keep this up, because they're about to go overseas, where literally nobody in the big major markets, the predominant markets for global golf, which I know this is going to sound so American centric, but it is. The European and the American markets are the kind of, that's where most of the money is generated, most of the eyeballs are, most of the big name tournaments take place. So when you have these guys going overseas for 3-4 weeks, it doesn't seem like they have a lot of momentum. We'll see if they make a bit of a splash when they play the week before the Masters and they come back. But I don't know, man. Jon Rahm, saying that it hurt to watch those tournaments. He wasn't here to defend, and then he had to watch the Genesis, and then he's gonna, he's gonna sit there and he's gonna see everybody at Augusta. Could you see a world where he breaks his contract and comes back?
No, I don't think so. Just because I think they've at least been smart from a business standpoint with these contracts. And I don't think there is a way that these guys break these contracts without, one, looking like fools, and two, having a massive monetary penalty. I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. That's the dreamer in me asking the question. Last but certainly not least, I'm after seeing Tiger wear it, I'm coming around on Sunday Red. I mean, we all know it was going to happen. When you see something that shocks you, well, and then even all the pot shots I've been trying to take at it, I'm like, oh, it looks like the Puma logo. Well, the Puma logo is a good logo. It's a successful brand, and it's like, Oh, I see what they're doing here. It looks like it's
Yeah,
always belonged. It looks like you've always seen Tiger wearing Tiger, like that kind of thing. I think
sure.
the thing I didn't see coming was the partnership with TaylorMade. But again, I think that makes sense. Kind of like you have the Jumpman brand under the Nike umbrella, where I don't know if it's a
Mhm.
similar setup business wise, but with the analogy of it lives in this family, but it's Sunday Red. It's its own thing. So back
Yeah.
to you in the studio.
Well, back to me in the studio to do the one important thing, and that's land this plane every week here, every Tuesday night, 8 o'clock on the That Sports Podcast Network. I'm Andrew LeDuc. This is Bud Copeland. We are Divots and Pivots, and we will see you next week. Enjoy the Mexico Open. Stay classy.